throw at you guys. Some of it's going to challenge you. Some of it you're going to disagree with. Some of it's going to enlighten you. Hopefully none of it bores you. Okay? So, but I need to know from you guys, what do you want me to cover? I've got a spiritual aspect, which George is aware of, and I was going to say, if you want, I can do a half an hour or something on what I'm aware of about the whole agenda for the planet and what's going on. I've been channeling since I was 14, and in particular channeling Source since I was 2009. So there's a lot of information for people who are interested in that, but I repeat, some of that's going to challenge you when you hear it. Okay? I don't say that what I say is true. It's what I'm aware of. Okay? I don't have any belief systems. Don't believe in anything. I've got an awareness of something. That means my awareness can always expand. It's never locked in to something.
So
but
it's theory until we investigate our own truth.
You nailed it. When you discover your own truth and it sits well with you, then stick with it. Okay? If it doesn't work for you, start looking. Start looking to find other options. Because maybe what you believe is blocking you from seeing what the bigger picture is. So sometimes you have to let go of your beliefs to discover new things. So to start with, we're going to talk about this whole law legislation. I call this thing, Who Killed Mary Jane? Who Killed Mary Jane Smith? And it's all about the legal system and where we sit in it. So, to help me, what do you want me to cover? Do you want me to cover cops, how to deal with cops, courts? You tell me the topic of stuff you want me to cover.
Can we start with cops?
Cops, how to deal with cops. Right? Beautiful. Courts?
Yes.
Courts? How do you deal with, what sort of documents do you deal with when they send you a speeding fine or from the courts or whatever? Anything else? Marriages, divorce? Alright, stuff will come up and I'm just going to throw it in there. I need to know from you guys where you're at the moment. How many of you would say you're just at the beginning of this common law understanding stuff journey? Awesome. Kind of. How many of you think you're all over it like pants at a picnic? Yeah? So the rest are in between. You might find you're not actually where you think you are. You might find you know more than you think or less than you think. And again, I'm just telling you what I'm aware of. I'm not a lawyer. I'm too honest to be a lawyer. Not a liar. I'm not a liar. Okay? So I'm just going to give a few bits and pieces of the basic information which you may not have been told of, which you might go, oh. And it all starts with this. Who's heard of the Unam Sanctum? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
What's it called?
The Unam Sanctum.
No.
Unam Sanctum. Okay, for those who've heard of it, how many of you have rebutted it? 1. Have you rebutted it in writing? Brilliant. Why is this clever man over here rebutted the Unam Sanctum? Maybe if we find out what this is, we'll understand why we all need to do it. Who's heard of the Magna Carta? Okay, who's heard of the Magna Carta as a pivotal point of justice and all these bits and pieces? Yes. It's not. It's not worth the paper it's written on. Oh, is that a shock?
No.
Okay. Because it was done by the barons in Old England. This is why common law is called common law, because it's developed on the commons back in England. Okay, that's where it comes from, the terminology comes from. And these rich barons had to pay the Pope all of this money because the Catholic Church owned everything. Now here's the thing, the barons were serving their own interests. They weren't interested in the slaves that they had on their land. So everything they did wasn't for the people, it was to keep the rich rich. And they went to King John and they said, we don't want to pay this money anymore, sign this Magna Carta. King John said, no, I'm not going to sign it. So they basically held a knife to his throat and said, you'll sign it or we'll kill you. So he signed it.
Under duress.
Under duress. So the contract's not worth anything, is it? So all these people that are out there saying Magna Carta, Magna Carta, Magna Carta, haven't done their research to realise it's not going to be legs in it. So that was all gone. But what did the Pope do? Because they tried again, and King John said, please, please, please let me back into the cult religion. And the Pope said, well, on one condition, you've still got to pay me all the money, but if you don't pay me the money, then the crown of England comes to the church forever. Heirs, successors, everything. King John said, yeah, no problem, that's the deal. King John reneged on the deal. He didn't pay the money to the Pope. So what happened to the crown of England? It went to the Vatican. Guess who King Charles serves?
Vatican.
Because he's renting the crown. His whole family rents the crown. You know, when he was recently coronated, they did it behind closed doors. He was crowned with the King Edward crown. Does everybody know that? That's a Catholic crown. When he came out to face the people, he had the imperial crown. But he was crowned by the Catholics, because the Catholics own the crown, and they said, you can be the king because we own the crown, and we'll rent it to you. Have you ever seen pictures of Prince William and all of them when they wore the big cloak with the star on here and the ostrich feather hat when they parade? That's called the Order of the Garter, which is the highest order of which church? Catholic Church. So they're lying to us right in front of us. So what's the deal with the Unam Sanctum? The Pope issued what's called a papal bull. And this is what the papal bull said. This is for everyone on the planet to adhere to. Every soul on the planet is claimed by the Vatican Church. Does that sit well with you? You all happy with the fact that your soul is owned by the Catholic Church?
Yeah.
The only two in this people in this room whose soul is not owned by the Catholic Church.
No wonder my uncle hated the Catholic.
Drew and me. We're the only ones that the Catholic Church doesn't own. Unfortunately, folks. And you say, well, hang on a minute. I don't agree with that. How can the Catholic Church own my soul? They did a papal bull. We claim every soul on the planet for the Catholic Church. Well, I don't agree with that. Who's heard of what's called a maxim of law? Okay. M-A-X-I-M. A maxim of law is a fundamental that is unchallengeable and stands as the foundation stone of law. And there's a number of them. There's like 120, there's more than 100, but there's like 120 like really obvious ones. Here's one of them. He who does not deny, admits, or accepts. He who does not deny, admits.
My number plate is that. My number plate is that.
How many of you have denied the Unam Sanctum?
Tell me how to do it, please.
Yes. Well, if you all stand up and you say, well, I deny the Unam Sanctum, does that count?
No, it's
Why doesn't it count? Because it's verbal. Because guess what? Their world exists on paper. Because it's all fiction. We're real. We're flesh and blood. What matters is what we say.
Is that implied consent? Is that the term implied consent? Or not really? Or is that another one?
Passive acceptance?
Yeah.
It's sort of both. They play around with it. But at the end of the day, they're trying to trap you here. As you currently stand, you don't exist in their world. You're not a fiction. You're a real, live, living man or woman. So how do you exist in their fictional world of paper? You exist as the capital-lettered name.
That's your corporation.
Well, we're going to go into that. It's a little bit more than a corporation. So we have to put something into their system that makes it clear that no, I'm not in your system. The most powerful document in their system is the affidavit.
So are we dead to them?
Yeah.
No, you don't exist at all. Because you're not a fiction. You can't be living or dead if you don't exist at all.
If you subscribe to being called a person, right, then you're dead, you're a fiction.
You're changing your
Person comes
status.
from the Latin persona, meaning a false identity.
So we're a living man on a living
Well, now this puts a new slant on LGBTQIA.
Do you know what all of that's about?
Yes.
The only thing that has rights on this planet is the living man or the living woman.
Well,
The
that's
minute you
what
call
I just
yourself
realised
anything
that-
else than that,
Yeah.
you become a fiction. If you're a transgender, you're a fiction. If you're a he, you're a fiction. Anything that's not living man or living woman is a fiction. I'm a doctor, you're a fiction. I'm a painter, you're a fiction. And you must come under the rules of fictions. Doctors have rules. Painters have rules. This is what's called legislation.
Can we just go back? I thought Henry VIII got rid of the Catholic Church.
Oh, do we want to go into that whole thing?
King John was much earlier.
King John was much earlier.
Yeah, 1200.
1200 and 12, yeah, 1215 was Magna Carta.
Yeah, so
Henry VIII, there's a whole story about Henry VIII. Do you know what that whole wedding was about to Catherine of Aragon? To legitimise the English throne to the bloodline of the gods. Catherine of Aragon was the bloodline of the gods from Spain.
oh, she really.
Yeah, let's put that over here,
Which goes.
because I want to get into that later.
What?
Catherine and Henry VIII. When you hear this, you're going to go, whoa! Why haven't we ever been told that about Henry VIII? Why don't the rich and elite tell you anything? Because they want to keep you as slaves. If they told you the truth, you'd question everything. So why is the affidavit important? The affidavit, their system, is a system of trade and commerce. That's it. That's all it is. Trade and commerce. It's all about money. In their system, the affidavit is the most powerful document because I make a sworn statement. You get a chance to challenge whatever in that you don't think is true, and the rest becomes the law between us. It becomes the law. So your affidavit is the most important document you throw into their system, because in your affidavit it says